That's great. That's great. You guys both brought some interesting points, and I just love hearing about how people are impacted. I love hearing about how the customers are safer and have a better experience. I love hearing about how the drivers and the employees are able to submit these leave requests easier and more conveniently. I love hearing about Dottie and how that brand personification has increased trust with users, with the executives. It's great. And I love hearing that Ali and the team were able to help you guys deliver on all this.
Yeah, and to me, and when I've sort of spoken at different some Oracle conferences and things like that with some of the Fusion 5 as a partner, when I'm approached by people who are looking at the Swift application and they understand what we've done, and then they'll come and speak to me after and say, how long did it take? And when you actually share with them, once we had our data right, once we had our security right, it's actually really, really quick. But you need to make sure that your architecture is in place first, because an application isn't going to save your business. It's the entire architecture and knowing how you're going to use it. And it's not as hard as what people think to get the architecture right, but you have to have that architecture mindset.
Yeah. So it comes down to being deliberate. A tool isn't going to save you. You need to be deliberate about the architecture and deliberate about being, uh, having, maintaining the integrity of your data and being serious about the integrity of your data.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
100%. But then how do you actually get the priority of, now that we can turn things around so quickly, how do you prioritize what's first, second, third on the list? Um, is it just the IT developer guys sitting in the corner thinking, oh, here's a cool idea, I'm just going to go and create this? Or is there a real process and a purpose to it? Um, I don't, like I just sort of said, I don't think things happen by chance. You need to have an element of governance, or a funnel where all of these ideas come into for a smaller group of people to sort of say, yeah, there's some real business benefit here. Because the last thing I want to do is go away and create four new apps that do order approval when it's only going to cater for 5 people. I want to go and create an app that's going to cater for 200 people. So that's where I'm going to get the business benefit. So, yeah, IT people shouldn't always be making priority decisions. So we have at Dyson's an architecture review group that I've created. And that's where all of these concepts and ideas come in for review. We talk about it, we prioritize it and say, okay, do we really need it, or does it exist already, or can we leverage something else, or do we actually create something new? But by creating something new, are we going to remove 2 or 3 other processes? It's got to be that whole of business design, not just the IT guys thinking it's pretty cool.
I like it. I think that's a good note to wrap up on, making sure that there's some sort of governance around these projects so that it gives maximum impact to the organization.
Just to add to that point quickly, Raza, just to add to that point, I've always been a big believer that any enterprise should never outsource the architecture. That's one IP that they should have. The master architecture should be owned by you. You could be working with 10 different vendors. They could be best of breed vendors, they could be niche vendors. But the fact that just Mark just mentioned here, right? The architecture, IT should be owning that foundation and the compliances and all that thing. Because once that foundation is strong, then you can build the agility on the top. Just think of like, you know, buildings, like if you have an earthquake, if the building is agile, the reason that can happen is because of the foundations, right? So if you end the agility at the top, so you can have a very rigid architecture that everything is so fixed that, you know, if something really shakes it up, it just collapses. Neither can be it completely fluid that it can just be swayed by the air, right? So I think that's a very good sort of point that Mark just brought about, that once you have the foundation sorted out, the architecture sorted out, and then you know that where no code fits into that architecture, where compliance is critical, and that should be owned by IT. The foundation should be owned by IT. But the business problems, what should be prioritized, how that functional knowledge and those, you know, those subtleties of those, the nuances that come along with actually living through that problem can only come from those subject matter experts, right? So once you make that marriage between your IT and those subject matter experts, and if you have a platform, we like to call it an innovation agility platform for that very reason. is because then you can have the best of both. The fluidity and the agility that you really need in the real world scenario that the end users face, but the foundation being so solid and so strong and so compliant that you can have the trade-off that we've always seen in an enterprise is whether I am compliant or am I agile, or basically agile, right? So typically you have that trade-off. Either you're going to be compliant or you're going to be fast. We wanted to break that trade-off with Swift and with the platform. And it's just a great partnership to see that in action, right, with Mark and with the other customers doing that. It's such fulfilling.